again, before we get started, some housekeeping issues. If you're on Zoom right now, please make sure that you are muted. If you do want to public speak, please make sure that you open up the chat box, state your name, your address, and the subject matter in which you like to speak on. We have a sign-in sheet. Again, we're getting an echo from the dais.
Trying to get rid of it.
Once the meeting begins and the chat box will be closed, that's a way people will just circumvent the public comment section. So if they do open it up for additional public comment for any reason, then just use the raise your hand emoji. That's part of the Zoom program. We'll begin with the in-person public comments and then move towards the Zoom comments at that time where the meeting is open to that portion.
Any further?
That's it, man.
Let me know when you're ready to go.
All set. We do have Councilmember Andrew on the Zoom call.
So let's call our December 8th, 2020 Town Council meeting to order, and please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you'll join me in our invocation. Father, tonight as always, we pray for your guidance and decisions for our community, for all those who live in our community. We ask always that we keep our first responders safe as they serve us. All of our military men and women across the world and abroad, safe as well.
Just a reminder for Town Council, make sure that again you're speaking into the microphone. Closer is always better.
Okay. How's that? Our open public forum tonight, I know that we have potentially a couple groups of individuals that may wish to speak on different topics. And double check. So basically, normally what we do, for those of you who may not join us for a council meeting prior, is if you have a specific topic that you want to have comments on, you can either speak now, or you may wait till that agenda item comes up. So I'm going to call out your names, and if you'll just let me know whether you want to speak now, or whether you'd like to speak a little later during the topic. And just a reminder, when you do come to the podium, please make sure you give us your name and address for the record, so we can properly reflect your comments in the meeting minutes. Thank you. Let's see, we have Mr. George Faulkner.
George Faulkner is on Zoom, and we'll just need to see if he wants to defer to the item or speak now.
I will defer till we get to the item.
All right. Thank you, George.
Okay, George will defer. Mr. Kirk Frazier, Boathouse, please. Thank you, sir. Mr. Russell Gentry, also Boathouse, please.
Russell Gentry is on Zoom. And I've asked if you defer or want to speak now.
Good evening, I'll defer.
Defer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Ann Finelli.
Oh, I think I got it.
I don't see Ann Finelli on Zoom.
You're not hiding behind a mask here, Ann. Let's see. Okay. And Ms. Anna Mae Ponce?
Miss Anna Mae Ponce is on Zoom and she will defer.
Okay, that's for Butler. And then those who signed up, Kurt signed up twice, but we'll give him this 3 minutes. Mr. Fay, are you going to speak on Boathouse? Would you like to defer, sir?
I'll defer, correct.
Okay, Jerry will defer. Mr. Andrew McGee, Oh, I see back here. Okay. You'll now or defer, sir? Okay. Why don't you go ahead and come up and vote? Again, just give us your name and address, sir.
Andrew Reedy, 56 Butler Street. I just stopped by today on behalf of the Windermere Company, of course, the company that I co-own and co-founded with my partner, Joe. Joe unfortunately is not able to join us tonight, but he sends his regards. We just wanted to stop by and, keeping with our mission as a company since we started doing this 3 years ago, is one of the central roles of our company is to give back to our community as much as we can. With that being said, of course, 2020 was for better terms than nicer, and we weren't able to participate in St. Patrick's Day as we always do, which allows us to support a great cause, the Windermere Police Department Foundation. And whether we've been in a auxiliary support role where we're helping plan it with Mr. Smith here, or we've been donating our proceeds from merchandise sales over the past couple of years. We still wanted to do something this year. So Windermere Police Department Foundation to us is an exemplary foundation. It provides a lot of support for a lot of different causes, from mental health to kids to wounded officers to you guys just finished November, so mental health. And I mean, countless really, if you get on the website and look at all the causes that Windermere Police Department Foundation is able to support. So in our minds, it is a foundation that we continuously, on an annual basis, do want to, in some shape or form, support from now until the future. And with that being said, there's been a lot of rhetoric in our country about police, and the way we view it is the Windermere Police Department is the exemplary police department. I think that our community policing is superior. We probably set a standard in most cases, and I think we have probably one of the best leaders that any police department can have. So with that being said, we'd like to go ahead and hand our check off to Chief and give that to the Windermere Police Department Foundation.
Thank you, Andy. Amy, not only thank you for the check, but we appreciate the kind words and sentiment for the police department. I know that's something that we're all very proud of. And, there's a lot of people in this room that work really hard to make that so, and we're very grateful. Thank you, sir. Next up for public comment is Mr. Randy Haynes. Randy, would you like to defer?
Yes, please.
And then Mr. Tom Street.
Yeah, I'll wait till you, thank you.
Sounds good, sir. And Ms. Harper?
I'll defer.
You're gonna go now?
No, I'll defer.
You're gonna defer as well. Okay, great. With all this mask you're wearing, I realize now how much lip reading I do. I didn't even know. All right. Next up on our agenda would be our consent agenda. But what I'd like to ask council's permission to do at this point is to add a couple last minute additions to our agenda this evening. We have two items. Their second harvest matching grant. This is from the Windermere Wine and Dine Foundation, and it's for $35,000. I'd like, with council's permission, for us to add that and the Windermere Wine and Dine Orlando Philharmonic event. That's also a check request for $26,250 from Windermere Wine and Dine Fund to our end of our new business agenda item. Council, do we have any issues with that? Can we get a motion?
Mayor, we need to add the local agreement as well.
The mutual aid?
Yeah.
Yep, I'll add that next. We'll do the Windermere Wine and Dine first, and then I'll do the, council, can I get a motion to move those items to the?
Motion to add, those items.
Thank you, sir. Second from Mr. Martini. We get voting with Councilperson Sapp. Aye.
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 And Ms. Eaton?
Aye.
Affirmed. Okay, thank you. Also, the other item is our annual mutual aid agreement for our police department. We'd also like to add that to the new business. Motion for that as well.
Motion to add?
Second.
Thank you, Councilperson Martini. Thank you, Councilperson McKinley. Begin voting with Councilperson McKinley.
Aye.
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 Aye. And Councilperson Ryder, aye?
Aye.
Thank you, we appreciate that, Council. Guys, I'm only counting one now. All right. Council, moving along to our consent agenda tonight. This is item Z21-01. This is 3229 Wasion Drive request by Christopher and Amy Rucky for variance on the north side setback of their home to be reduced from 13 feet to 11.32 feet. The DRB recommends approval. Do we have any presentation on this tonight, Robert?
If the town council so wishes, we do have Brad Cornelius on Zoom. He's behind you and will be able to present the case and the DRB findings.
Sounds good. We also already be represented here as well, Councilperson Martinez. Council, would you like a presentation or do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, but it's pretty mild.
I saw this 5-0 as well. All right, Councilperson Martinez makes a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second. And that's any discussion, Council? We'll begin voting with Councilperson Sapp. Aye.
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 Unanimously approved. Thank you. Under new business, we have our town council meeting minutes for November 10th, 2020. Staff recommends approval as do I. Do we have any, I can get a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved, Councilperson McKinley. Second. Second, Councilperson Staff. Any discussion, Council? In voting with Councilperson McKinley.
Aye.
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 And yes, thank you very much. Next up, we have a resolution ordinance for approval first reading. This is resolution number 2020-07. This is purchase of unit number 45, police department vehicle. This is a resolution of the Town of Windermere of Orange County, Florida, authorizing the issuance of a note in the amount not to exceed $37,500 for the purpose of paying the cost of purchasing a public safety vehicle and cost of issuance of such note. Delegating to the town manager of the town, subject to compliance with the applicable provisions hereof, the authority to award the sale of such a note to Synovius Bank pursuant to a term sheet. Approving the form of and authorizing the execution of a business loan agreement and promissory note. Making certain findings, authorizing certain officials of the town and others to take all actions required in connection with the issuance, sale, and delivery of said note and providing a fee.
That would need a motion and a second because it is a resolution on ordinance.
All right, so a resolution here, and we'd like a motion for approval, council.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Councilperson McKinley. Second? Second. I'm gonna get, that was a close talk, I think I'm gonna give that one to Councilperson Martini. Any discussion, council, or questions? Seeing none, begin voting with Councilperson Sapp. Aye.
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 And unanimous with Councilpersons Andrews. Next up. This is item D. This is contracts and agreements. So we have two here tonight, council. We have IPO number 118 and IPO number 119. These are our Butler Basin designs, as well as our Bessie Basin design. Robert, do we want to have the presentation first and then allow for comment and then council comment?
That's fine. I mean, I think several of you and those that are in the audience tonight have all attended at least one of the three Zoom workshops that we had relative to the IPOs. the reason for the changes and the hybrid method that we're doing right now. But pretty much the new IPOs, not only do they separate design from construction, and also the possibility, if the council so wishes, to move forward with the maintenance plan and have KHA do that. But it also takes into account, again, that we are going to be creating our own standards. It's a stormwater project, it's not a road project. And then based on our dealings with FEMA and DEM from HMGP grants, hopefully based on the precedents that we've set in the past of stormwater projects only, that they would not require us to adhere to Green Book standards, and we can move forward with just a stormwater remediation that was proposed in the concepts. If this is to be approved of the do not exceeds tonight, we'll move forward to an RFQ process for this basin, these two basin projects, and then we would look for an award sometime in January for that RFQ. So tonight is not adopting the IPO, it is just adopting a do not exceed amount of the two costs. But we would like some sort of consent relative to the concepts that have been presented to you. Actually, the most recent concepts have been presented to you that were part of the agenda packet. So that gives us a way of saying, okay, now we've put that issue to bed, and now we can move forward to design and use some of those concepts as a basis for the design. Meaning that, all the work we've done over the last 8 months doesn't go away with the design against concept, and we just start honing in. We go from the forest to the trees at that point.
So that's the work that's allowed us to get to this point. I also noticed in the IPO that there's some checkpoints and stopgaps in those measures to allow us to get to a certain point, and then it comes back to council to make sure that the design and concept is going in the direction that council and the residents would like to see. Is that correct understanding?
That's correct. What we'll do is we had 2 milestones, 45% and 100%. As the residents that are probably here can testify to the fact that we've been holding plenty of meetings out with a lot of the residents, making sure that we've done everything that's transparent as possible and accommodating wherever we can. And that's how we honed in the concept from what we started off with probably 8 months ago to what we have presented in front of you today. This won't stop, this outreach and this, back and forth working with the residents directly impacted and non-directly impacted. So there'll be 2 milestones. One will be at 45%. We'll come back to town council for approval of that 45%, and then the final 100% plans. Once we reach that 100% plans, we'll submit it to FDEM, which is working on behalf of FEMA. If they approve the designs, then we move into the construction category. If they deny the design, then we still have a design that we can utilize, and hopefully they would still fund the construction, but we don't know that. But if they do deny both the funding for the design and the construction, we still have something to create an IPO, not an IPO, but a CIP on, which would give us a chance to either self-fund or seek other grants that don't have any strings attached to fund those projects, either as a whole or to prioritize them to where we're seeing more flooding to less flooding areas. So there's a lot more input that residents are able to give throughout the design process.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. I think what we'll do at this point, if there's no objection from council, is we'll go ahead and hear from those individuals who signed up to provide comment regarding this, these 2 agenda items. So this is for Bessie and Butler IPOs on water mitigation. So let's go over real quick, and I'm going to guess, I'm pretty sure I can guess who desires to speak on those items. I know we have it's Anime Klotz. Would you like to go ahead and just give us your name and address and go ahead.
Anime Collins, 632 Butler Street. I'm just fine. I think everyone knows who I am. I think everyone knows how I feel about this. I live at 632 Butler Street. I've taken the water, and my neighbors, the Willards, have taken the water. I'm hoping that this decision tonight is an easy one for you. This has been a tough process. Honestly, I think my home and the Willard home should have been forefront in this process, and it hasn't seemed to be that it's happened that way. I feel like politics have come before that. Other people and their concerns have come before that. And it's time to make a decision. I know you're not going to make everybody happy. That's impossible. I think the people to focus on are the stakeholders in this. And primarily, that is me, and it's also the Willards. They've taken the brunt of this, and I don't think it's right. And I think you have to do what's right. It may not be popular with everyone, and it may not be easy, but I'm asking you to vote for this concept and do what's right. I'm also very hopeful that we'll be able to get this grant money, because I also think that's right. There are many residents in this town, not just me, not just my immediate neighbors, but they extend out into the old town of Windermere, the Willows, the Manors, etc. And I don't know how you're going to face them and tell them that they have to have a tax assessment because you turned down the grant money, trying to keep a few people happy. So I have met with John, and I have met with Robert, and I have met with Hal recently, and I've refrained from that up to now, but I felt like I needed to do that. I feel like I'm good. I'm good with the plan. The right of way in front of my house is not mine. It's the town's, it's everybody's. So if it makes sense, do what you need to do. But I'm asking you to please vote yes for this concept, and let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, for your comment. Appreciate you being here tonight. Mr. Stewart.
Tom Stroop, 201 West 7. Is the plan the same as it was the last time we looked at it on Zoom? Robert?
Yes.
In the other meeting, yes.
Yeah, the one from 3 last week, I guess 2 weeks ago. Thank you guys for listening. I talked to Anna Mae, who first came through the door, make sure she was happy also, because I've talked to some of my neighbors, and I know all of you personally, and Chief Ogden and I worked together for 25 years, and I do care more about this community than I do about politics. But I just want to say that I think this is the way it's supposed to be done, conversation, making adjustments for what people think until we get the job done. So I don't have anything to say other than what I've been saying all along, is I can only attest to what I know on my street. I can't say what's good for anybody else's street anywhere else, or even in front of Emily's house, even though she's just down the street. I can only talk about, and I've said this from day one, when I've talked to the mayor and Robert and anybody else, is I can only say what I know about what's going on from my street. So any comments that I've ever made in the past have only been relevant to what I know, which is in front of my house. I talk to every town councilman about the same thing, so not to get confused with anything else, I want to make sure that's clear that I don't have an opinion about what goes on anywhere else, because I don't know the facts anywhere else. I've always spoken on what I know, and that's in front of my house. So I'm going to make that clear tonight, and I also want to thank everybody for the extra effort they put into this whole process.
Thank you, Tom. And yeah, the process has been one I think we've all learned a lot from, and we'll continue to move forward in that direction. Next is Ms. Marco. You want to speak on this topic, right, Nora? Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Laura Brophy, 426 Magnolia Street. A couple of comments. I wanted to thank Robert, Hal, and Victor. I know you guys have worked really hard
listened to all the residents and tried to make this, work a lot better. And it looks like what you've done on Butler Street is much better than it was. So we appreciate that. I started looking through the proposals and I was looking at the costs. And some of them seem crazy. There's a fee of $10,500 for landscaping design plans for the retention pond at Fernwood Park. Now, I don't know anything about construction costs, but I know a lot about landscaping costs. And you can't put $10,000 worth of plants in that retention pond. So I don't know how you get $10,000 for the landscaping plan. So that, it concerns me. I was looking at those. There's $15,000 for the road maintenance plan, which seems like an enormous amount of money for one small road. So I hope the council, once you get over and make a decision on the design plans, they can really take a look at those costs because they seem very high. And then I know you're voting on the John Davis statue tonight.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say how beautiful that's going to be in Central Park and what a really nice thing it is of Mr. Neighbors to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nora. We appreciate your comments. At this point, we'll turn these two topics over. We'll start with IPO 118, Butler Basin Design. We'll turn these. We'll start with item 1. And Bessie, we can start to discuss that. I'm sorry, did we miss somebody? Oh, Brandy, I'm so sorry. Come on up. I swear that was not intentional.
I hear you. Brandy Haynes, 835 Oakdale Street. I do want to say that I think the town has done a good job with what they've done on Butler Street. I think they've refined what the design looks like. I didn't really look too much specifically at the cost, so can't really speak to that. I do still have concerns though that every time a new plan is put before us for the impacts in front of my property and some of my neighbors' properties, it's getting larger and larger. We've gone from, other than the road not being included, we've gone from a 14-foot swale to now we still have a 14-foot swale, a 9-foot swale across the street from us, still a 3-foot shoulder on both sides, 3 culvert outfall structures, and 1 sewer structure, 3-foot by 3-foot, all within the 61-foot length of side of my house. I think that's going to have significant impacts to my property value. I have concerns over safety. I asked during one of the charrettes what the size of the culverts would be, and the culverts will be 15 to 24 inches to account for the volume of water. My daughter is a 3-year-old child. I am 20 inches wide at my shoulders. That means a full-grown adult can crawl through a culvert that size, whether it's elliptical, squish, or not. I think it's too big. I think it's too much water. Velocity, I believe, will be coming through there, and I think the impacts just keep getting greater and greater. I have serious concerns about the fact that there is nothing presented to show what's going to be part of this plan to the north on Oakdale and to the south on Oakdale for my intersection. None of those neighbors have had anything to look at, and I had a meeting yesterday with Fitzgibbons and Lysander, and one of the things we discussed was I had them look in my front yard so that everyone can see when you stand in the front corner of my home. You look out to Oakdale, you look out to 9th Street, my yard slopes up to the road. And I asked Liz and John Fitzgibbons to witness that. So I already get runoff on my entire property from both angles because there's a berm and the whole thing slopes up. And the comment was made partially in passing, maybe we need a swale on Oakdale Street. I think there's more than enough impact to our property, and I would like to see the town do something to start showing the same kind of constraints on impacts on Bessie project that they've done to refine what they're doing on Butler. I don't feel where that's been happening in our properties at all. And I just feel like we've been fighting battle after battle from paving the roads to the barricades just every 6 months since we moved in. 6 months after we moved in, we came in about the traffic and the speeding on our street. which we have fought tooth and nail with everyone on our street. And we have no idea what's gonna happen on Oakdale, and all those neighbors are concerned, but there's been nothing presented, no conceptual for anybody to look at. And I'm tired of living in a battle zone. I don't want my streets widened. It was barricades, then it was the paving, and now it's this. I want to see the town make the effort to give us the same considerations of what this impact to our lives and our safety for my children and future children that they've done for everyone else on Butler Street.
Thank you, Randy, appreciate that. Any additional comments? I make sure I don't leave anyone out here, and apologize for that, Randy. Robert, see any? All right, seeing none, council. We're on contracts and agreements, IPO 118, this is the Butler Basin Design. And approve that, we give council direction, or give staff direction to move forward, or have some further discussion. That's up to you.
Like to have further discussion.
Sounds good. Councilman Kinley.
Let me find all my notes. In looking over these, and I'm going to address both IPOs at the same time because the information is essentially the same, one for the other. No matter which way we go tonight, I would like my previous request for the problems that caused us to look at these two areas in the first place. What problems were we having that caused us to go out and include an entire basin to resolve problems? The area from 7th Avenue from Main to Forest. I don't see a lot of problem there, and there had been previous discussion about making a rain garden there next to the schoolhouse and diverting that water away so we would not have to include it in there. Rather than tearing up what we already have with landscaping and everything else in front of the schoolhouse and changing the entire area. Ditches versus swales. It's already been determined that dirt is going to run off these roads and into these swales. We show a pretty picture of a 14-foot wide swale that has grass in it. That's not going to last. That dirt is going to go into that swale. And pretty soon we're going to have a 14-foot wide span lot running down people's front yards. Of course, it's in the right of way, but they have to maintain that. That's in our ordinances, that the residents will maintain that area. So we're going to have a problem with that going in there. Town of Oakland uses a ditch. My suggestion would be that rather than crowning the road and putting water retention on both sides, with our small roads, that we could angle them to one side, put a small ditch and save some of the existing right of way. We could put the ditch on one side, the water on the other. It would work fine. I just think we're over-engineering a lot of this. And I'd like to see us look at that. To utilize an engineering firm to develop a maintenance plan, I have never heard of in my life. Engineers design. They don't develop a maintenance plan. And we're looking at these two for Butler, $14,100. For Bessie, $6,875. That's almost $21,000 for two sections of roads. To develop a maintenance plan for those two sections of roads, we have a lot of dirt roads in town. We should have in-house somewhere the ability to go ahead and develop a maintenance plan to maintain these roads. That's only for the maintenance of the roads and the stormwater. That is not for the tree canopy, for the parks and everything else. So if we're going to engineer this out, I think we're looking at a ridiculous amount of money that we're going to be spending. So as far as using Kimley Horn to develop our maintenance plans, I'm firmly opposed to it. Landscaping design, I agree with Nora. The amount to do that for one rain garden is, it's just absolutely ridiculous. We're talking about making a rain garden out of this thing, and that's fine. We designed for all of the parks the landscape. And had we used this thing, we'd spent a lot more money. So I'm just looking at what we can do. One thing that if we do move forward with this, that I would like to state, going along with Brandy, is that we would have guards on the culverts to prevent kids from going into them. I've seen them in a lot of places where you just put a little metal grate over it that allows the water, small objects to go through, but it would not allow a child to crawl up in that culvert. Snakes and other things are in that culvert too. So I definitely wouldn't want any kids going in there. Down stormwater. That's pretty much all I have. I heard some people in favor of it. I watched the YouTube and I thought it was great. As far as that goes, however, I have not heard a lot of people in full support of it. Whereas I've heard a lot of people speak out against it. Everybody I've talked to that watched it were happy with some of the compromises. And they say it looks better. Some of them still don't want it. But if, since we're looking at moving forward with this thing, we'll still have the design no matter whether we're turned down on our grant or not. At least we will have a plan. I just think that we're over-engineering part of this plan. And we're looking at a major flood or something. We'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. But I think for our normal going through this procedure, I'd like to see us tone this down a little bit. When we come back to the 45%, and take a little harder look at what this thing is going to cost, how it's going to look, and how happy the residents will be with the plan. The 14-foot swell, to me, is an absolute no-go. I can't see that anywhere. That we would need a 14-foot swell so we can mow it. Don't go in able to mow it until you have a few heavy rainstorms and part of the road's going to be in your swell. And then we're asking the residents to maintain that swell.
So a couple quick things that thank you, Councilperson McKinley, just a couple quick notes. The way I read the information for tonight's meeting, the maintenance plan, that's a a la carte item that we can select or not select. As part of this, just FYI. So
I'm just in opposition to it.
I understand, and I know it is an expensive piece. So also, we're going to RFQ this process out, at which point staff can negotiate with those qualified applicants to get to the best price as well, right? Is that correct, Robert?
Yeah, once we select somebody based on the qualifications, then we negotiate the price. And then we're still going to come back with an a la carte method to where you can pick and choose what you want to pay for and what we can possibly do in-house.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make some clarifications there to see what our options are, so we're all talking apples to apples. So, all right, thank you, sir. Any additional comment, Council?
Yeah, I have some, Mayor.
Councilperson Martini.
Robert, we're not gonna RFQ the design portion of this, correct? We're talking about the construction part.
No, we're already doing the design.
So we're not necessarily using any more moving forward on this.
No.
Okay.
There's potential, but, you know.
Yeah, I know we have to, because of the requirements of the grant funding, we have to do it a certain way. I agree with a few of the comments that Councilman McKinley expressed. I think I would like to see, an option for for, and I've requested this several times, for 7th from Main to 4th Street. I'm pretty opposed to tearing up the schoolhouse property for no reason other than I don't think it's necessary. It's relatively flat there. I think we can do a lot of that corner and use some of the town-owned property that's within that stockade fenced area where there's no trees or nothing that would have to be disturbed. So we have plenty of room there to create a basin to catch water. And I'm viewing that from when you turn off of Main Street onto 7th Avenue. It's a beautiful view down that street. I don't see any reason to make that 40 feet wide. It's ridiculous to even consider that. So I would be opposed to that. I did ask for several times for a version of that in the concepts, but still don't have it. I don't know if ditches are an option. I've been to Oakland. I know they have a similar situation that we do. However, they're kind of flat as a pancake. We don't have that here. We've got elevation changes everywhere you turn. So, but if looking at ditches in certain places creates a better option for certain areas, that's great. I think we should look at it. I also agree with the rain garden. I realize these prices are not to exceed prices, so I know there's some flexibility in play. And I also think that we can in-house create our own maintenance plan. I don't think we need to pay a lot of money to have that done. We're already paying several people who are well versed on what needs to be done and when here, and we're in the process of hiring a new public works director who should be able to do that for us as part of their employment. I do want to thank the residents for all their input and the staff for being flexible and changing this thing as needed. I think the staff in the town has shown that there's a willingness to adjust. We did get off to a rocky start, but we have listened to the residents, and I'm glad that they have given us their input. It really means a lot to getting us to where we are today. I think moving forward, that needs to continue, especially to the design portion of it, because as Ms. Haynes stated, the Bessie design is 3 or 4 revisions further back than 7th and Butler is. There's been a lot more changes on 7th and Butler, so they've been fine-tuning. We've been fine-tuning that for quite some time. So we need to get to Bessie too. I think when we get into the design part, there will be the same flexibility. And as I said in one of the earlier meetings, that every intersection we have requires a custom solution, and I think everyone agrees, and that's what we're headed towards. So I think that pretty much covers it. I wasn't sure if Brad was going to talk about things like that we talked about before, like homes that were renovated or built that are not maintaining their current stormwater structures, I know that's all part of the mix. It's probably not relevant to this decision we have to make tonight, but I just want to make sure that that's still part of what we're doing moving forward.
I think that's definitely a conversation we need to have. I think that's a favorable conversation there in terms of, because that would have to be done town-wide to make sure we, enacted something that was equitable across the board.
Well, no, I'm talking about houses that were renovated or built since the ordinance was put in place to capture their 1 inch, and I think Brad was going to just be reviewing those properties to see. He did say that he looked at those.
Yeah, I do recall that. Thank you. I just want to comment on the ditch comment that's come up a couple of times now. It's my recollection, and I might be incorrect, but there was, when we did the ditches on Oakdale, there was a ton of negative feedback regarding those, and may have been done before you were town manager, Robert. I remember Councilman Pirzolo and all those folks, they did not like the ditches because they were much more difficult to maintain. And I believe that for that reason, we actually started to maintain this, if I remember correctly, so. I'm not here. Does that sound right?
Yeah, the councilperson at the time that you mentioned, I believe, was just flat out refusing to maintain them. How pleased they were, so I just said, if you're gonna dig this ditch, you're gonna mow yourself.
So, anyways, I'm not opposed one way or another, it's just a comment that, certainly I know we've gone down that method before, and that was not universally accepted. Although I do think that, I think that solution works very well down there, but that also.
Hey, but Jim, I think the one thing that's important for us to remember.
John, you have to wait till you're recognized.
Yeah, so I think what's important on North Oakdale is we were establishing those swales back to the inverts that were originally designed for that subdivision. Remember that road was built as a subdivision on North Oakdale. And what we did was reestablish those roads to the original invert elevation. So it was more of a maintenance program than it was anything else. And I know Mike wasn't really super happy, but that was what the original developer put in place, and we reestablished it. So
Well,
can you hear me? Okay.
Okay, so I think what he said was that it was part of the original development plan.
Yeah, that's a, hold on. Am I getting that feedback?
It was on the dais.
Yeah, that was a reestablishment back to the original development deal for North Oakdale.
Thank you, John.
That was just my recollection and for thought.
All right, well, if it's something we can add to our à la carte menu or possibly use occasionally or, for a specific property. Sure. It may work out best to use that. I think we learned our lesson by applying the word template into this stuff because, we really can't. Everything has to be a specific solution to each area. And I think the town has shown willingness to do that and to make it work for each of the residents. I see there's a new house in Oakdale on First that has culverts and the concrete inlets on either side of the driveway. It actually looks pretty elegant. It's not 24 inches by any means, and I don't think we need to over-engineer these solutions. I think we need to focus on keeping the charm and character of the town and using that money judiciously and make sure the residents are satisfied on every step of the way. I think we've done that so far, or we're getting there. So I think we come to a compromise on all this stuff.
Thank you, Councilman G, appreciate that. Further comment from council?
Just real quick.
Councilperson Sapp.
I guess in this whole process, as long as we are looking at taking care of the whole basin and that we do not use the road as conveyance of water, we get it on as quick as possible to prevent these washouts and such. As for the landscape plans, just my experience at the PBC was involved with the roundabout plans around town hall. We bid out for those jobs, and they were on there. So hiring a landscape architect is on the pricey side. I'm not going to get heartburn to not get off the list, but I think it's going to look better with something in a hole in the ground. Plus, environmentally, it's a lot better than something filtered, sediment still there. And I would agree, let's hang on to the maintenance plan for a bit. We still have intentions to hire somebody that is road school time. I would assume there'll be a selection committee that's put together for the selection of the public works person. That be kind of part of the process, what their experiences are in developing maintenance plans for them. But obviously, there would have to be some sort of coordination with our engineers to make sure that set of plans, make sure the systems and everything.
I agree, and I think we definitely requested a comprehensive. And I think that's gonna be an effort, and recognize the great pieces that'll be, roadway drainage, tree canopy, et cetera, so, I think that'll be a little bit of a process. I might just stop this, something that will.
Presumably, we get to do fast one, and, we're just hate this direction. We're rugged. Obviously, there's 27,850 left on the table, but, I think it would be responsible to forward.
Thank you, Councilperson Sapp. Any further comments, questions from council?
Yes, I have some. May I?
Yes, absolutely, Councilperson King.
Okay, I've written them out, so I'm just going to read from here, and then you can answer them as succinctly as possible to move us along. First, what is a reasonable timeline for the course of events, kind of in its entirety? And if you could briefly describe what are those events along the way? I know we've kind of talked about them and addressed them throughout the conversation, but if we could put together kind of a this, and say about how long. And in particular, I've had residents who have asked about how long until we receive the 45% designs. And will we hold more community conversations and presentations around those 45% designs before council makes a decision to go or no go on that?
Well, first, the RFQ process would take about 30 days, and then 2 weeks after that for selections. That gets us into mid-January. And then once we do the selection and move forward design, Hal can just give a general overview of what he expects a engineering group would take to do a 45% design. But we will, throughout that process and also in the RFQ itself, include a certain amount of stakeholder meetings and presentations, which we do through Zoom, prior to the 45% threshold, and then prior to the 100% threshold. But as far as the actual, we can create a Gantt chart from RFQ to 45% to 100%. But it all, again, depends on the residents' input and then council's input as well on how many times that design changes, if they are going to change. But I can turn it over to Hal to give more specifics on a time frame.
Sure. So yes, the time-consuming part that's been taking a while in the study, and I envision will take the same amount of time during the 45% design, is the valuable public involvement that we've been having. So I would say that after the RFP process, and then the selection, and then the notice to proceed, I anticipate a 3 to 4 month period for the 45% plans, with a couple of public meetings during that time. Obviously, if there's a desire to have more public meetings, that could stretch out another couple of months. But based upon what I've experienced as part of the study, I would probably say about 4 months for the 45% plans with public involvement.
Okay.
And
thank
then 100%, we're probably looking at just a couple of months, because at the 45% level, it's probably just straight shots to 100%.
Okay.
2 months after that.
Okay. I know, and again, experience has shown us that, everything is different. So, we can be optimistic or hope, but we know that there might be more complications along the way. I appreciate that. Thank you. This isn't, I don't know, even if it's a possibility, but do we have the option? So we've talked about having a utilities corridor or not having a utilities corridor in these plans. And so do we have the option to ask for parallel concepts for the 45% level, one which would include a 6-foot utility corridor so that the residents could see what that looked like, and then one that did not include the utilities corridor? Would that increase the cost to this significantly? Would that change the design significantly? is it even possible?
It definitely is possible. You know, the utility corridor with a 6-foot shoulder, we presented several options for that, for both Bessie and Butler, and that was met with some disapproval from residents and things like that. There is a utility portion of this proposal that's just for water main, which town council can decide whether or not to proceed with final design. But as part of that cost for the utility corridor, we would provide a couple options on locations for that water main. And so it would be more with the water main portion than the stormwater improvement, and we separated that way so it can be chosen to move forward or not. You do need about 6 foot to put in the water line, and for Orange County to have enough width to maintain it. So there will eventually have to be a decision made on where that 6 foot swath is going to be, either adjacent to the right of way or the shoulder which we previously presented. So if we move forward with the water main design, that's where we'll provide some options for the locations of that water line.
Okay, thank you. If we don't approve the utilities corridor in this IPO, is there a guess on when we will need to go back and dig up to create the corridor? How far away is water plan implementation? And Robert, I guess maybe I'm asking you that because if our residents are saying, okay, fine, we're going to approve a concept and then a design that don't include the 6 foot utilities corridor, I'd like to kind of have a realistic presentation to them on representation to them on, you know, how soon will they now then have to have, you know, another digging up of the land adjacent to their property to put in that corridor?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's all about availability of funds. You know, hopefully another CARES Act package does get approved and it has infrastructure within it. If not, the next one, hopefully one that would follow that, you know, design of that would actually get us even closer to being fully funded because we'd actually have a design for it as opposed to the master plan itself. But the residents are going to have to accept the fact that if we don't put it in now, at some point we're going to have to come back in later and do it. I can't give them a time frame on that.
Okay, thank you, fair enough. On the Bessie project in particular, we've heard about a design that would extend along Oakdale, perhaps from 8th down to 10th, but we haven't seen really concept for that yet. So my concern is that those neighbors along that path on Oakdale don't have anything yet to react to, and we haven't received comment from them. So are we close to having something? Have we started considering something there? At the 45% stage, surely we would have something, but are we going to reach out soon, and how to those neighbors along there to start to prepare them for that? I know that's kind of a strange question, but still at the same time, I feel like we haven't really discussed that much, but here and there we've had talks about, well, maybe we might put some more stormwater structures along Oakdale from 8th to 10th, but yet no concepts have been presented anywhere, so people can see that.
Right. Due to the progression over the last 8 months, we're talking about concepts. Again, the scopes have changed a bit, and the latest solution to that scope was to include north of Oakdale and south of Oakdale at 9th, you know, especially with the prize issues and some issues to the north. They will be involved in the design process. You know, we haven't completed concepts just yet because I didn't think we want to keep going further down this road. And spending more money, but in the design, hopefully, again, if we are awarded the not only the design funds from FEMA, but also the construction, we can include that construction portion into this grant. We've been showing not only water management, but also FEMA and DEM that when they give us money, we're able to not only utilize that money for the projects that we promised to do, but we actually add additional projects to that list, which are very good.
Okay.
But we didn't want to spend more money on concepts for those areas that we just added, and we're again getting closer and closer to that time frame where we had to either give the money back or proceed with a RFP for design.
I understand. I think that, quite honestly, the town staff, and I'll echo what Councilman Martini said about all of the input from both directions, all directions in this. I think that this has been a, a grand effort, I'll say. And I think that there should be trust amongst the neighbors at this point that at that 45% stage, we would continue to seek input and invite that. So hopefully those neighbors, actually, I'm sure those neighbors would be included in discussion, and we'd reach out to them. So, and their input would be taken into consideration. I think though too, we have had some commentary that suggests that maybe on the Bessie project, we haven't done quite as much effort in discussing with all of the neighbors and coming up with some more agreeable options. And so I'd like to see some more effort put forth in Bessie, such as we have done over in Butler. That's just my perspective on that. John, we talked the other day when we were out with the Haynes family about how looking at some piping across the whole Haynes property to convey the water that is coming from the street on the other side of Oakdale and 9th. What have you were going to see if you could follow up? I'm just curious if you had an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I talked to Hal. I think the important thing is that tonight what we've got to do is figure out a way to get Kimley Horn moving forward so that we can have these conversations and get enough stormwater solutions and understand the hydrology and everything else to be able to understand what we can and can't do to make sure that we, you know, like I told you when we were meeting, we have to come up with a creative design so we're not impacting the residents, maintaining our dirt roads. It's all the stuff that Robert's talked about. But until we actually can, you know, get these guys on board to be able to begin to establish that, and that's why we put stop gaps in the design to allow us to take a stop, a moment, and then go meet with the residents to say, hey, we've run all the calculations, we've run everything, and here's how we see this massaging into the way that we want to maintain the community and the way we want to maintain the dirt roads. But, you know, tonight's a defining moment for you guys. And it's no different than what we've done for the last 12 years, where we have agreed to allow engineers to start the process. But now what we have to do is go back and massage the design to make sure that the residents like ultimately the solution that we come up with based on engineered solutions that are going to solve the problem.
And I think, I mean, you know, I think Kimley Horn has done a good job at being available to answer questions and help us prepare to this point. At some point, I feel you can't exhaust that free advice line that much longer. I mean, I know that they're on retainer with us and they are on continuing contract, but still to continue to receive that much effort on this project, I think a decision needs to be made. So that said, thank you. My questions are answered.
And if to remind the town council when getting a couple of text messages for you guys to make sure that speak directly into the microphone so we can get the everything on recording.
My apologies, Robert, if that was directed to me, I couldn't understand that comment.
Oh, no, it was for town council on dais.
Any additional comment, Council?
Yeah, I just wanted, Councilperson Andrew mentioned, not extending the free advice part too far, and I agree with that. That's what we have done for students for, is to get as much free advice as possible. And I want to thank John. He's been working tirelessly to move this thing along, and he's been working with the town for 12 years on these types of projects. And it gives me comfort knowing that he's so involved in this, because he's great with the residents. He really takes the time to explain things, and he lives here. He's a resident. He's going to help us find these custom solutions that we need. And Michael Orr, of course, is going to be working with John as well. So they're a great team, and I think it's really going to complement Kimley Horn, assuming we move forward. And just want to thank John for all his efforts.
John told me to give you $20 now. I agree, Councilperson. Yeah, right. So, council, so in front of you, we basically have IPO 118 and IPO 119. So for IPO 118, we have a do not exceed of $67,990. I believe that's for the first 45%, and then 163,647. Is that correct, Robert? Did I say that right?
Those would be for the designs. It doesn't include any construction bidding assistance or anything like that. And again, you're not approving the IPOs, you're just approving the do not exceed as far as the amounts. You still have to go through an RFQ process, but you are, in essence, adopting the concept, so we don't have to go backwards. We can just continue to go forward with just the design.
The first number is the 45% amount, though. Is that accurate, or am I being misguided there?
That's one.
Sorry, 118 or 119? Yeah, 118 was the do not exceed to get us to that 68,000, which gets us to the design where we submit it to FEMA. So that would be all task one.
So for IPO, okay, so just for the first one, the do not exceed is what? 118?
Is 118, it would be $67,990.
Oh, for IPO, okay, so for IPO 118, it is $67,990. That's the do not exceed. And then for Bessie, it's going to be 84,880.
Yes, that's for the bare minimum. You know,
Right.
There's a huge range, but that would be the bare minimum for the design to get to DEM.
Right. So what you need tonight, though, is not the bare minimum necessarily. You need an operating range.
Yeah, it's still going to come back to you once we get the RFQ, and then you're still going to have IPOs to actually adopt.
I just want to make sure I don't hamstring you, but I also am clear with what we're authorizing.
Yeah, I would just approve, the concepts, and then move forward with the RFQ for designs for these basin areas, because they're both going to be included in the same RFQ, so I'm not having to do two of them. But again, I would just go ahead and maybe just do a do not exceed of the 163,647 and the 216,264. And that would give me an ability to start negotiating down from those prices.
Okay, so council, tonight we're looking for a motion to approve our concept for the Butler Basin design with a do not exceed of 163,647. Do I have a motion?
I guess we're all kind of we're all in agreement that tax 13 on both of those kind of kicking out. Do we just want to do that now, or just leave it as the?
Oh, for the deduct for the
maintenance.
I think we just need to say that. It won't be in there.
Right.
I don't think we need to. I mean, we can. I don't object to that.
When I come back with the IPOs, whether it's in the Ward, Wade, Trend, or anybody else, that won't be included in the next IPO. So it'd still be underneath that do not exceed threshold.
Right. So basically, on your RFQ, you would be looking for an engineer service to do tax 1 through 12 to do a bid on.
Yes, we're drafting the scope to include not only the stormwater, but also for possibility of utilities.
That's correct.
Okay, so that motion will still work. We all leave off the maintenance part on this particular portion. Doesn't mean we're not going to do the maintenance plan, but the motion in front of us is to approve the concept for Butler Basin design and the max do not exceed 163,647. Council, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second. Second, Councilperson Sapp. Any further discussion, Council?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Where we were talking about the maintenance plan. Is the maintenance plan included in this motion?
We're not going to move forward with the maintenance plan in this particular part.
So what we're doing in the motion is to approve less the maintenance plan.
So, correct, we're not going to approve it with the maintenance plan, and then, of course, we're going to negotiate the rain garden and those things. We're just giving them a do not exceed at this point. point. You'll see it at the 45% mark. Okay, any further questions, Council? Councilperson Andrew, just want to make sure.
No questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, begin going with Councilperson McKinley.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, for the Butler Basin design, we move forward unanimously with our concept. All right, council, same exact item here, but for the Bessie Basin design, with a do not exceed of 216,264. Again, leaving out the maintenance plan at this point. Council, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Councilperson Sapp.
Second.
Second. Councilperson Williams, any further questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes, sir, Councilperson.
Going back to Oakdale residents who have not had any samples, designs, input, idea of what's gonna go there. Can we insert some, another step or two for them to make sure that, they have input before we get to the 45% part,
Yes, I mean,
so they feel comfortable?
Doesn't this include several meetings and
yes,
to
yeah,
make sure that we get that input?
yeah. I mean, we're gonna have stakeholder meetings, but from previous guidance, it was to open up to everybody and not just specifically those that are in that area. So
Right.
I can
I just
do,
want to make sure that those residents, have, the 7th and Butler designs, 3 or 4, versions further along than Bessie. So I think we need to, make sure we can spend extra time or attention on the Bessie stuff to make sure that, they have the same amount of input.
And I don't disagree. It is my hope, though, that we don't have to do as many versions because we learned from the Butler experience. So it's my hope that we're gonna skip a couple of those.
I hope so too.
Me too. I know we all do. All right, Council. Any further questions or comments, Council? Seeing none, begin voting with Councilperson Sapp.
Aye.
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 All right, 2 unanimous votes on a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of feedback. I appreciate all the residents' input, and there will be additional opportunities. We certainly appreciate all the council and staff's time and engineering team on this as well. All right, we're now going to move on to item I, which is a monetary contribution for purchase of a Central Park statue. And this is from John Neighbors. Is anybody, Nora, were you going to present from Parks, or I know you mentioned it during the public comment, but if you wanted to mention anything further at this point, that'd be fine.
he actually already purchased the statue and is going to be donating it to the town.
Mr. Neighbors did.
Yes.
Excellent. Nora, I'm sorry, did you want to say anything? It's totally fine if you were done.
No, I just wanted to make that clarification.
Great, okay. So Mr. Neighbors is fully funding the statue, donating it to the town, and it will be installed in Central Park. Council, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Councilperson McKinley, looking for a second.
Second.
Second from, we'll give it to Councilperson Andrew because she's been patient all night, so. Any further questions, comments?
You have a picture of the statue, Rob?
It is in here. It's a dog.
Residents. Very nice.
Very nice. Hey, it even looks better that way.
Page 112. It's behind it.
It's very nice. Council, any questions or comments? Do we know where it's gonna go, or is that to be decided? I mean, I know it's going to Central Park, but.
Yes, he's chosen a spot for it.
Excellent.
Right, it's gonna be beautiful.
He's chosen a spot for it based on Noah Brophy's comments. It's just not near Mike, so I want to make sure that the record's clear.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve? Oh, we already did that. Very good. See. Good. Begin voting with Councilperson McKinley then. Sorry, guys.
Aye.
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 Unanimously. Next up, other items for consideration. This is the Town of Windermere Boathouse leases. Another opportunity where we have individuals who have registered to speak. So let me go ahead and get your input first. We will begin with Mr. George Pelker.
Well, okay, I'm George Pelker, 405 West 3rd Avenue, and I own the boathouse number 4 along with Joyce Rose. And I'm, first let me say thank you to John Neighbors for being so well neighborly. What a great thing. I want to start by saying I'm speaking for myself and for Joyce. She asked me to say a few words on her behalf because she didn't feel comfortable speaking in a public forum. So consider what I'm saying partly what she would say. I want to stress that the boat owners want to cooperate with the town council to come to some sort of conclusion for this issue, some sort of resolve the issue. And I think we've kind of exhibited that the last several years. We've tried to take care of the boathouses. We've cleaned up the yard, so to speak, and done some maintenance on them individually. So they're in relatively decent shape. I want to start by, or not start, but let me just say what we're talking about. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about what these boathouses are and all kinds of stuff, the history of them, everything. So these structures are strictly small boathouses. They're basically 3 sides and a roof. Some people think there's floors in there and kitchens and couches and all kinds of stuff. It's a roof over water. So that's all it is. It's a very simple structure. All of them are that way. Let me go through the history. You guys have it in your big handout that you have in your agenda, but I just want to get it out in the public. First of all, these are the second oldest buildings in Windermere, the old schoolhouse being the oldest probably. These things were built, at least 4 of them were built in the decade of 1910. So probably around 1912, 1913-ish. We have photos to show that. The town was incorporated in 1925. So these boathouses existed not a long time, but a decade or so before the town was even incorporated. People that owned them back then enjoyed, I would call it quiet enjoyment until about the 80s. And then as some of us know, the lake level went way down, that little lagoon went dry, weeds grew, the boathouses weren't maintained, and there was a big uproar from citizenry to do something about it. And that caused a lot of consternation, a lot of heartache and twisting of hands and all kinds of stuff. People complained. I've seen pictures from that time frame, and indeed it was not a pretty sight. So the water came back eventually, and I think right now the boathouses are very picturesque.
George, real quick though, the 3 minutes is up, so you need to ask the mayor for additional time.
Okay, I don't have much time left. I mean, I don't have a lot of things left, but a few things. Can I continue, Mayor?
Yes, George, go ahead.
Okay, so the result of all that consternation in the 80s was that a lease was signed with the boathouse owners in about 1986, and that lease was for 15 years. Then in 2001, when that first lease expired, the current lease was implemented, negotiated, and that went for 10 plus 10 years, so 20 years, which is now. So that's the history real quick. The boathouses are listed on the local historic register that was done at a town council meeting on 9 October 2001. That act controls a little bit what can be done with the boathouses and by whom, who can do what to them. There's been a convoluted, the ownership of the surrounding area and the houses themselves has been argued and debated and talked about forever. here's what I know. The land underneath the lake is owned by the state. So the boathouses the piles are actually driven into state property. The town owns the road and the roadway and the park that's right there next to them. And so, and then we own the boathouses. So the town has littoral or riparian rights. I prefer littoral rights, and that allows the town to control the use of the water. It doesn't give the town ownership of anything. Littoral rights don't give ownership. They are conveyed because of ownership of adjacent land. So I think we all agree on all of that. So my point of all this is we, the current boathouse owners, and a lot of us are relatively new owners. I bought mine, and we all have a financial and emotional attachment to these things. We paid for them. Granted, they've been passed down through a quitclaim deed, and that's the only kind of deed that's ever been used, apparently. But we all like them. We all love having them. We want to cooperate. We want to make sure they stay extant and that they look good. And so we're willing to work with all you guys and figure out the best way to accomplish that.
Thank you, George. Appreciate your comment. Thank you for the information that you provided. Council Packard, so for all of us to review. Next is Mr. Kirk Fraser.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself, talk about the boathouses. My name is Kirk Fraser. I purchased John Palmer Luff's house at 415 West 3rd Avenue last summer. We took possession in February. I have the lease on boathouse number 1. We first moved here to Orlando in 1995, and I became the coach of the Orlando Soldiers hockey team. Shortly after that, we discovered the charming community of Windermere. When I became the coach of the Atlanta Thrashers in 1999, we moved to Atlanta, but our family really missed living in Orlando. We purchased our home at 426 Forest Street in 2002, and we were fortunate enough to have former mayor and town historian Carl Patterson and his wife Jane as our neighbors. Carl took us under his wing and helped us feel part of the community. While writing his book, he also introduced us to the history of the town and loved some. With 3 young boys, we walked to Palmer Park almost daily and always loved the park and boathouse. As we moved several more times with the hockey business, we sold our home on Forest Street and waited 15 years for the Loft House to become available and give us the opportunity to move back to Windermere. We love the water and we love the boathouses. Our boathouse was built over 100 years ago by Kel Palmer, the town founder, and has always been in their family. We are fortunate to be current caretakers of this piece of Windermere history. When we took possession of Boathouse 1, it was in need of repairs. I performed the necessary maintenance to get it back to its original charm and look forward to taking care of it for many years to come. Part of the reason that I was excited about the purchase was that the boathouse came with it. George Folker and I recently decorated the boathouses for the holiday season for everyone in the community to enjoy. We all look forward to cooperating and working together with the town council to find a solution to this leasing situation so we may all keep the boathouses. Thank you very much for your consideration. Have a great evening, and this is my first time at a town meeting, and so far I've really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you for commenting, and we're looking forward to seeing your renovations continue around that house. Next is Mr. Russell Gentry.
Good evening, Russell Gentry, 409 West 2nd Avenue. I've been a town resident for 131 days. The mayor asked me to articulate that when I got before council. It probably gives me the dubious distinction of having the fastest record of council and staff knowing a citizen's name because of the blizzard of emails that I've been going back and forth with. I appreciate all the responsiveness of staff. They've been very helpful as I was getting myself up to speed. I echo Kurt and George's information. I think that it's fascinating the history that the boathouses hold in the town. I think that I have a little bit different perspective that I'd quickly like to offer town council, which is the property that I and my wife Cindy purchased was previously owned by Fred and Angela Pryor. Fred Pryor, as most of you probably already know, was very instrumental in the negotiation of the second series of lease agreements. So in conversations with Angela, I've been able to get some insight as to what the actual spirit of the agreement was and what it was intended to do at the time. He apparently was a very intelligent and successful man, and he realized that he was running into some serious roadblocks because of all the angst with the structure was designed, apparently, designed to give up ownership and to lose ownership of the boathouse rather than to provide a win-win situation for council and also for the boathouse owners as well. I've been going back and forth with Robert Smith and with the town staff and documents, and I think at council there is more than sufficient documentation that, of course, by today's standards, it's a legal lease agreement. However, I think that by design, there's some nuances to it that you have to ask yourself, if there was never ownership, why was it designed the way that it was designed? For example, the economics of it. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to have your ear. Many of you I've talked to. We're super, super happy to be in the town. We've planned this move for many years and we're ecstatic. But I think at a minimum, this requires much more consideration. I've seen the Gray Robinson interpretation. It has words in there like seldom. It says could not provide, but we think. It's just, I think that there's to the way that Fred positioned this back in 2001, and then immediately filed for the renewal piece, the second renewal, which was a point of angst for a workshop back then as well. So again, I just provide a win-win situation here. The economics, all of the owners spoke this past week, and we realized that we can provide economic changes to the arrangement with the town, and then that money can be put to good use. But I really encourage us to be able to renegotiate our current ownership. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry, and welcome to Windermere. We're happy to have you. Next up is Mr. Jerry Fay.
Jerry Fay, 28 Wayne Street. Been a resident since 1957. Don't cut me off, right? Since 1957, we've been the proud owners of boathouse number 5 since 1866. And at the risk of being a dead horse, those boathouses have been a big part of Windermere for a long time. They've been teaching the teams. They are also in Carl Henderson's book. And I think, speaking at least for my brother and myself, we would welcome the opportunity to at least go into negotiations with the town council for renewing our leases. That's it. Everything else that I wanted to say is already been said. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. We appreciate it. Next is Ms. Ann Finelli.
She was on Zoom. I'm trying to see if I see her anymore. Ann Finelli? I'm not seeing her on the Zoom call anymore. We do have a hand raised by Doug Taylor.
Okay.
Hello. Hi.
I did not see him on earlier. Does Doug have a comment?
Doug, is your comment on the boathouses?
Yes, it is. Can you hear me? Yes, can you? Hi. Yeah, this is Douglas Kegler. Currently reside at 12 Pine Street, but we are building the house at 316 Palm, which is the corner of Palm and 3rd. I just want to say that although our house we're building is very modern looking, the reason we love downtown Windermere is the streets and the character and charm. And we like the boathouses there. We, like what Kurt and George, keeping theirs maintained, and we don't want to see them go anywhere. That was all we had. Thank you.
We appreciate it. I believe that concludes any public comment unless I've missed anyone. I think this is everyone up here except for my first opportunities to talk about boathouses. I had the pleasure in 2011. All right, so these are it's a very interesting topic, and it comes up and has been coming up kind of every 10 years. And you look back into the minutes, and one of the other things that the minutes are interesting, you also see that 30 years ago, the big issue was cut through traffic. It's an interesting little find in there. And I was like, yep, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Council, I know that we also took the opportunity to pencil in a workshop to have available to have further conversation on this. But certainly want to leave this opportunity for council to kind of share their thoughts and a little bit about their feelings and needs as we prepare to move forward on these items. Like to venture first?
I'll go first.
There you go, Councilperson Martinez steps up.
One of the options on the agenda was the removal of the boathouses. I don't think that should be an option. I think it is a iconic part of Windermere and should remain as long as possible for the next 100 years or so. And I can't see any reason to remove those. I know there's a lot of. I remember this coming up 10 years ago and 20 years ago, and the same consternation, but I wasn't involved back then. So I know there's a lot of interest from other residents in the availability, possible availability of boathouses, but I don't have enough information either way to make a decision tonight. I'd like to see more input. I'd like to talk to the residents. Mr. Gentry was talking about Fred Pryor's involvement and the spirit of the lease and broke up on the Zoom call when he was talking, so I didn't really catch any of what he was saying. But so, I'd like to meet with him and talk to him and as well the other residents about it.
And I think there are some things that, as we're talking about tonight, maybe we can begin to kind of not only get everyone's feelings up here, but get some ground laying. I heard George mention that the boathouses are on the local historical register. I can't find that anywhere.
It's
our historical register.
The minute it was put in on the agenda back in the 80s.
Right.
It's our.
It's our, but
Correct.
But it's not listed actually.
Orange County.
Not that it matters.
Ours.
I just like to clarify so we have everything clear. It looks like there was a move to do that, and then it wasn't actually officially done because it became a lease item after that point. I too agree that I'm not keen on removing those boathouses, so I believe they are part of the character, even though there's pros and cons to them. I'll be frank. Sometimes they're amazing, and sometimes you're like, oh, it'd be nice to have that little view there. But especially as it gets more and more challenging to see the lakes as people build bigger and bigger homes on the lake. So those those items become important, but they're important from both ways in terms of our history and in terms of view of the lake and things like that. You know, I mean, there's some ownership challenges too. And certainly I believe that the town itself owns the access to those boathouses, and is the proper agent to lease those if that's the way the council decides to go. Any other thoughts and comments?
I have a question. I hadn't thought about this until recently, but as we're talking about littoral rights and that accompany the ownership of the ingress, egress to these houses, the access to the boathouses, if we just sold that land to those owners conditionally somehow, maybe to put in there that a provision that they must maintain the structures in their historic aspects or whatever, is that a possibility? And that would eliminate future confusion over ownership rights if we just simply sold them the land?
I don't think, Liz, that.
I'm just asking if it's a possibility. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd go out on the limb and say that there's probably nobody sitting up here that would be interested in selling a park to any private owners, just in terms of ownership of that ingress egress. Am I speaking out of turn? Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Liz. Any other thoughts?
I'm just kind of curious if what the comments were from Historic Board and then maybe Parks and Rec, and then I'll kind of give a quick comment.
You know, as far as the Historic Board, we started some discussions a couple months ago when this first started to pop up on our radar. In looking at avenues of how do we protect them. I think a lot of it right now is everybody just feels that we're going to tear them down and kick everybody out, tear them down. I don't think there's, you know, I'm speaking for myself, that I don't ever see that happening. And I think there's a lot of angst that it's drawn, the line's drawn in the sand right now. There's one way and that's it. And I don't think that's, I don't feel that way. Right? I think it's a complicated issue. Back to the Historic Board, that's where I got that the registry, Windermere's registry.
Okay.
With that being said, everybody discussed how we keep them in good condition, unchanged, to represent what the original were. And everybody, when we talked about it, was pretty much on the same page there. But it was about how do we move forward with it. And then the lease questions. You know, where do we have the right to change the leases and who leases them versus leaving them as they are and working out a new deal.
So no formal recommendation.
No, other than we touched on it and then it's got a contract. We've only had 2 meetings since then. And this would go back in September.
What was your comment, Councilperson Sapp?
I'd like to see if Councilman Kenley, if there was any response from.
Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Did you have any comment from Parks and Rec?
The only one from Parks and Rec is listed here that they would like access to 1 or 2 of them. To rent out space for canoes and kayaks. That's an idea that has been floated around for access to the lake.
Right.
Or lakes with kayaks and canoes. That's, you know, I think first we need to decide what way we want to go with the current leases. And I agree with Councilman Martini that right now it's difficult to sit here and say this is what we're going to do. I'd like to have some more information. You know, if we go getting up this pie, let's figure out how we're going to cook the pie. So I would like to have a workshop. You know, I know it's a difficult time right now, but
well, I think we've even got one scheduled.
Yeah,
we earmarked for this. So
before our January meeting, and have a workshop.
if it'll
We have a little bit longer public input, really look at this.
So if it'll please council, I think what we could do at this point is we could give staff direction to move forward with a month-to-month lease. We'll have a workshop. We'll look at all the options. We'll talk to all the residents. We'll be able to, do this in a thoughtful way. And I think that gives us the best opportunity, rather than trying to rush something here and not get to the result and then just be here 5 years or 10 years from now. So let's put the work in, put the effort in. We've been doing well on these things. So they are tough things to talk about because all of our friends and neighbors are the folks who want them. And yet we also want to make sure that everyone has the maximum access to the lakes. So, these are tough conversations. So let's go ahead and do that. If the police council will make that recommendation.
Maybe just
Sure, absolutely.
Lines. And the reason I wanted to hear from, the liaisons from different committees, just to see if there was any direction, obviously.
Right.
Not more time with it. Generally, I think a month would work as any other lease, where there's essentially a 15-day notice, of some sort. We've got a lot that's going on the plate that maybe we negotiate at fair market value, a 1-year lease, and then charge the Parks and Rec and maybe the historic board and any other group that council sees fit. Put together a game. What I don't want to do too is just say let's not renew the leases and we just have buildings there that are getting more dilapidated.
So why don't we do, so I don't have a big objection to that. My only concern with we just do a year lease at market rate is the fact that you don't, rather than kick the ball, I'd like to move the ball. So maybe if we, let's say 6 months, and then we really go do the work to make sure that we get somewhere.
That's fine. I just want to put it down. I think month to month allows it to be capable of the next month. But as we know, with stormwater, we've got a lot that's on right now. We have the holidays that we get through.
Yeah, and we're still in the middle of it. And who knows what we're going to with COVID and everything, but I do think that, unless the council can adjust this as needed as we get closer, but I do believe that I'd like to keep it forefront so we don't, it's our work, we signed up to do it, I'll do it.
But I think there's a couple of slips for rent on the chain that we can get comparables with. You've got the Sportsman's Club, you've got Bayville that rents out slips. You can kind of get a gauge for what that costs.
Yeah, but the only thing I see is when you start talking slip-wise, we need to find comparables, and you're gonna have a harder time because these things are small. Instead of old John boats, 16 foot or smaller, that's not what you're gonna find out on a fair market. I'm more lenient to is keep it the way they are, extend it 6 months, let's work to that finish line and not come up with, let's come up with some grand number to throw out there to go, that's market value. Because I think it's going to push a lot more pressure on this.
Yeah.
It doesn't need, we've been fine the way they've been for the last 20 years. 6 months isn't going to do anything to it.
Yeah, I mean, 6 months is not a game changer. I just want to make sure that we give, that not only do we staff, because we learn this, we can staff the direction, we give committees. We'll be able to do that at a workshop, but in the meantime, we can extend them as is for 6 months to help us get there. Is that reasonable?
That would be the recommendation, because if you're not extending with the existing terms of the lease, then you're renegotiating.
Right. Correct. Just keep it simple, right? For right now. Knowing that we're all moving in a direction that's going to allow us to figure this out, hopefully once and for all, kind of not have it kicked on every 10 years. All right. Do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
Okay. Council looking for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Do we have the language?
The language would be to extend the leases as is 6 more months.
And allow for historic and parks to review, help us and help and have a workshop and have council with a long-term permanent solution. That's a long motion.
Well, all you have to do is 6 months.
Just do the 6 month lease. 6
I'll second.
month lease as a second. Okay. Any further discussion, council?
Yeah, just from those two committees, And so it, you know, pushing the chairs and really push for that indication.
We just haven't been on the agenda right there. They've been inside comments.
All right, we'll begin with Councilperson Sen.
Aye.
Aye.
And unanimous from Councilperson Inner. Thank you, Council. Next, we have a couple items. These are the items that we move to the end.
Again, I can have town council move the mics closer to their mouths. Seems like everybody keeps drifting away.
Robert, I think part of what happens is because we don't have our microphones on here, and it's going through there. I don't know if it's all picking up. So, because I've been trying to be really careful.
They can hear you fine. It's Bill and sometimes Bob that they're having issues with.
Okay. All right. So basically what we have here is we have 2 check requests from, yep. Did anybody hear that? I heard it.
No, I'm getting text messages of, we can't hear from that side, it's because of the distance.
Sorry.
Well, that's one of the problems we've always faced is when we turn to speak to someone else, we move our mouth away from the microphone. Always been a problem.
Plus, it's rare for us to get a message to say, can you please speak up so we can hear her? Usually like, hey, you're quiet. All right. So, Robert, you want to address these 2 checks and just give us the rundown on what these are so we can get these approved hopefully.
Yeah, I do have CT Allen on the line if she wants to address that, but, as you know, my spending threshold is 10,000. If not, I have to take it to town council for approval. I was just notified that these 2 checks would be cut on Saturday. And in order for me to spend over that 10,000, I have to make sure that I have town council approval of that threshold. They are having an event in March where they're going to have the Orlando Philharmonic.
Would it be possible for you to remove your mask so I can hear you a little clearer?
Yeah, so they're instead of having the Winter Wind Down event in January, they're having a music in the park event over at the Pines where they're going to have the Orlando Philharmonic being out there. And then what you do, from what I understand, is you rent a space out at a certain threshold, and that determines what type of meal or wine that you get in order to enjoy the music. And they will be donating a certain amount of the spaces to the first responders that dealt with the COVID crisis. So the 1 check request is for, I think, a little over $26,000, and that's for the Orlando Philharmonic. And then in addition to that, they're making a donation to the it's a matching grant to the Second Harvest Food Bank of $35,000. As you know, Windermere Wine and Dine, one of the major goals is to support local charities in the area that have not only direct impact to Windermere, but the local area. And, due to the COVID times, again, they are in dire need of making sure that the food banks are full.
Absolutely. We've seen it here with the amount of people from the parks who've been laid off. These food bank lines are hours long. So I know that I think that's a tremendous asset, and I'm really pleased that Windermere Wine and Dine is going to participate in that. And I know that we all got the opportunity to participate as well and have those funds matched. So council looking for an approval for these 2 checks. Go ahead.
Before we go, okay, this is going to be held at the Pines, and I'm just trying to clarify what I think I just heard. There will be 2 checks, one for $26,000 to Orlando Philharmonic, and another for $35,000 to
Second Harvest.
Second Harvest. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is the date of this event?
The date of the event, I would have to refer to Bill.
So it's March, I believe it's March 9th, and it's also a fundraiser as well. So, and it's all socially distanced. They do little cubes. They go directly to your cube, and you can hear the music. I saw, I believe it's on the joke being done at Dr. Phillips.
Anyone putting information out on this anywhere?
Not yet, but
there's a hold date that went out on social media.
Yeah, we're still working. The committee's still working on the logistics, but again, it's going to be on that date. And then we're working with the waste committee for volunteers. But as I said before, what you do is you pay money for a square, and then you sit in that square and then enjoy the music and whatnot. So it's somewhat similar to what you see at Dr. Phillips when they have concerts now. But it would be a fundraiser, so they will be able to offset that cost that they're going ahead and doing that matching grant for the Second Harvest Food Bank.
And this is sponsored by one.
Wine and done, yes,
These
sir.
are all, yeah, these are all Windermere ones. Great.
Yes, sir.
All right.
That was gonna be my comment, to stay for the record, but, special line item is,
Yeah, it was last minute. It came to me through on Saturday, as I said before. So it's coming from Windermere Wine and Dine. Again, it's for the matching donations to St. Harvest Food Bank, and then getting the Orlando Philharmonic on board for that date.
That's fine, and it was obvious where it's coming from, but I just want to make sure for the record that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilperson Sapp. Council, we have a motion to approve these two items for the Second Harvest matching grant of $35,000 in the Windermere Wine and Dine Orlando Philharmonic check at $26,250. Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved, Councilperson Sapp.
I'll second.
Motion or second from Councilperson Martine. Any further discussion, Council? Begin voting with Councilperson Sapp.
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Council. And I do appreciate your flexibility in helping us get that on this agenda for this evening. Chief, did you want to comment on the mutual aid agreement?
No, it's a standard agreement. Just
Standard agreement for mutual aid?
You have a new sheriff in town over there, so they did a little bit different. Typically, I sign this.
Gotcha. All right, so we'll also need a motion to approve our mutual aid agreement for 2020-21.
It's going to start January 2020. It's going to go to 2024. So it's a 4-year.
It'll be for 4 years.
4-year agreement.
It's a 4-year agreement for mutual aid.
So to 2025.
Yep, 21 to 25. All right, so I'll clarify the motion. So once we get double check those dates.
Mutual aid with who?
Orange County Sheriff's Office, as well as the other agencies.
Okay.
So it's a standard agreement. I guess it just has some different language. We've done that in the past. It's pretty standard. So, all right, so motion to approve our mutual aid agreement for Orange County, and that's 2021 to 2025.
Yeah, December 31st, 2024. So right before. Then we'll do another one.
Okay.
It's a standard agreement. It's per Florida state statute. The only difference this year than the others is in the past, it's never had to go to council. They're just requesting it this time. So the agreement's always the same.
There's some for
And the effect of the budget.
No effect on the budget.
Andrew, any comment, council, before we get a motion? All right, we're looking for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Councilperson McKinley. Second.
Second.
Second, Councilperson Sapp. Any further discussion, council? Again, voting with Councilperson McKinley.
Aye.
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 Thank you, council. Motion passes unanimously. And I can't talk to this mask. It's error from my brain. Council, any liaison reports?
I have a couple.
Thank you, Councilperson McKinley.
Parks and Recreation has ordered a new swing assembly for Central Park. Hopefully it will be installed before the end of this month. We'll include 2 regular swings, 2 infant swings with a bucket, and then 2 swings that are for toddlers or people with physical disabilities. You can actually strap on them like they have a key swing. They're going to create a path from the pavilion to the swing area to accommodate personal disabilities. So that upgrades that park. Also, Parks and Rec secured a commitment from Orlando Health to sponsor the annual Run Among the Lakes, the 510K race. And this commitment is for 2 years with an option for an additional 2 years. For Fernwood Park, I'm sure a lot of you have gotten emails from different people opposing a boardwalk in Fernwood Park. It's kind of a misnomer. It's not really a boardwalk. And it will be on dry ground. But anyway, Parks and Recreation has placed that wooden path with benches on hold until the sign of berms within the park is further along. The plan is to place the walk and benches near those areas. For the Elders Committee will be holding our second luncheon distribution on Tuesday, December 15th. We are planning on just, we'll be delivering meals to the seniors that have signed up, and we're planning on distributing right now about 70 meals. This was very well received when we did the distribution in October. And if any departments have information that they would like included in the package, please have them to Susan Carter no later than Monday at noon on the 14th. That's it.
Thank you, Councilor McKinley. It's excellent work that the town Parks and Rec is working on. Any further comment, Council, from your committees?
Yeah, Historic Board met last week. We've been on working on the 1890 schoolhouse because of the deterioration on the outside, on the exterior. It's gotten really, really bad. We're working with Public Works. They are pulling up all the sidewalks. We're going to remove also the handicap pad in front, bring it back to more original with the softer sidewalk around it. What we're having is the rains bouncing off the hard surface and up onto the building. And that's the reason the lower 3 feet of all the walls are pretty much gone. So that's getting done right now. Travis has most of the sidewalks up. Ran into a couple little things. Sidewalks a foot thick in a couple spots. Yeah, we went from 4 inches to 12 inches. And then the admin's ordered the supplies. We're gonna have a work day coming up and do some repairs to get us through the next stages. So.
And we're taking out the ADA access, I guess, without.
It's not required.
There's no point.
It's not required. For ADA, if we have it open, we have to have somebody there to assist somebody in and out of the building. And that's it. So that was our best way to go.
Yeah, no, it's tough. And that, we redid that building, it wasn't that long ago, so I'm surprised to see it so far along. Thank you, appreciate your. Councilperson Zach.
Our we did not meet, food trucks and farmers market selections, they didn't meet for the first time last March. COVID kind of got the best of the group. Approved several food trucks, however, it will likely be April before we see the food truck event, but we'll kind of play it by ear. It's a good event, so you see things that are, looking good. Other municipalities moving forward, we can put together an event pretty quickly. But right now, we were holding it, I believe would be the only municipality that would have best interest.
Yeah, I'd love to do it, but I think it's a bad move.
Especially it's not. So we've approved several trucks in that regard. We went ahead and approved some dates. For us, hopes by next year, this time will be up and running. The November Good Friday falls Black Friday is also the light of the year, and that food truck night will be November 19th. And then the December one fell on Christmas Eve, so we moved back to December 17th. Farmers markets caught up with a bunch of selections. So I've seen a lot of those vendors out there already. They were ahead of time with staff, but we officially approved them last week. I believe on Friday, Robert, we'll start with the thermal camera to see how that goes.
Yeah, we need to coordinate with Jason if he's on shift that day, and then we'll start with the thermal cams just as a data test, and then we'll start incorporating that into all of our meetings.
Good. Oh, and I see the project meetings. You just had the project meetings.
I haven't sent it out yet.
Good enough to you.
Thank you, sir. Councilperson Martini, anything from Element or?
No, this month's meeting is canceled. The redevelopment of 6th and Main Street property that we have not gotten the response to questions that were asked. So we're off the hook for the rest of the year on that one. We'll have information on January 8th.
Thank you, sir. Manager Smith.
I didn't know if Member Andrew had anything.
Just a few. For anyone who follows along with the Butler Chain of Lakes Advisory Board, they're not meeting this month, and then next month is, their meeting is always scheduled for the third Monday of the month. That happens to fall on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is a county holiday. So it's TBD on whether if that meeting will be canceled. If anything comes our way, I'll let anyone who's interested know. The Way Committee didn't meet last week. They rescheduled till tomorrow night, and they will be talking about Zest Fest event, which will hopefully be an event that they can hold on the grounds of the Schoolhouse Grove. And I know that Historic Preservation Board is interested in hearing more information about that. As soon as we have an update, that will be provided to Historic Preservation Board. And then Tree Board is working on draft plans for tree planting in Central Park. And I believe that draft plan has already been provided to Parks and Rec for their input. If it hasn't been, it will be coming to them. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilperson, and especially on the all the work with the lakes, but certainly the planting of trees. I think that's something that we'd love to see a lot of, especially as we continue to lose a lot of these 50-year-old trees. So it'll be wise for us to replace those as we go. So thank you very much. And now we'll go to Town Manager Smith.
Nothing. Happy holidays. I think you all understand what staff has been doing over the last month, working on various projects. We did have a very successful meeting on last night. Yes, on the pedestrian bridge. If you haven't had an opportunity to watch the YouTube video, please go to our YouTube channel. We posted the presentation, and there's also a survey that's attached to that as well, so you can choose the finish, the look, and some of the safety features of the actual bridge selections. But that's part of the West Orange Healthcare Alliance phase 1 that we're doing from North to Park. But pretty much basically, hopefully things get a little slower over the holiday season. But I do see us ramping up sometime in January again with the grants, the designs, and also with the development of the 500 block. So
we do I saw all the markers out there for utility locating. Is that for the pavement project on the bridge, or are we going to coincide this?
that's the pavement plan.
I thought so. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, we received a preliminary design, and then we're trying to work on the alignment when it hits West 2nd Avenue. That's where we had the issue with the oak tree. And then we're not going to be putting in a sidewalk as part of that old dirt main to a paved old main, because again, the kids need a stabilized surface to get to the bridge and over the bridge to school. And then, we didn't want to spend $40,000 to $80,000 on sidewalk that we're just going to have to rip up unless we do work on them and pull it out.
Okay.
But that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate all your effort. Chief Ogden.
I'll be quick as well. I know I'll keep you guys, I think, updated pretty well each day. But some of the things that will be coming up here soon is Sergeant Stefano will be retiring after 44 years of service to law enforcement. So we'll make a celebration for that. And that will cause some transitions in the police department. Namely a position of sergeant that was open that was tested for last month. So we're moving that. And also we're going to be moving forward on a recognition ceremony sometime in February, where we are already make sure that we have all the safety protocols in place. And that'll be for the Savvy family and for the officers who helped us on the horrific double homicide that we had. So I'll be sending out a safety message to you guys on that next week. Give you a little bit more details. And that's all.
Thank you. Anything from you? You just sign more stuff?
No, qualifying opens tomorrow at noon. 3 open seats. Mr. McKinley, Mr. Martini, and Mrs. Sanders. Their seats are up. So there are 3 open seats.
I'm glad we're having fun.
So it begins tomorrow at noon and runs through January 8th at noon. So anybody that's interested, you can either get the packet online or you can appoint me to the office to pick up a packet.
And I see here that, is Travis on, does he have any comments?
Travis is on, and before we get to him, I do want to apologize to CP and Windermere and Diane committee. Again, this is a last minute thing. It's a huge deal for them to be donating that amount of money to Second Harvest Food Bank. And then for us to, pretty much present just the bare bones of what they've been working on for several months. I didn't do it justice by trying to explain it. So hopefully next month we can have a presentation by one of the members of the Windermere Wine and Dining Committee, and as well as getting a check of them actually donating the funds to the Second Harvest Food Bank. So I do want to apologize to the Windermere Wine and Dining Committee because they have put a lot of work into it, and that'll turn it over to Travis.
I have nothing to report.
Thank you, Travis.
I'll tell you what, I trained him well over the last couple of weeks. I just want you to know.
Well, then you're talking your ear off, John.
I know. Go ahead, Travis.
I'm muted, John. You're welcome.
And Councilor Rivas.
Let me see if I can be as dramatic as Travis.
Fair enough.
Happy holidays, everyone. I have nothing.
Indeed, and certainly we'll have Windermere Wine come and talk a little bit about their events and share everything that they've been working on. Give that the proper due. We certainly want to make sure that we wish everybody.
Hey, if Robert would unmute me for 1 minute, I do have an announcement. Are you guys good for January 11th for the groundbreaking ceremony?
Oh, John's still going?
I guess he's talking about
I know
that we're trying to schedule.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure because I'm trying to coordinate that with the contractor and did have that one update for you guys because we're ready to ground break on January 11th. If I think, Bill, we just need to hear from you. I think everybody else was cool. So anyways, it's a great ceremony for you guys. You worked hard for it.
Thank you, John.
Hopefully, is that it, John?
Oh, that's
I muted my.
All right, I muted him.
We appreciate it. Just want to make sure everybody has a great holiday. I appreciate everybody's time and effort. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, we adjourn.